Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew from Tulip Valley, and I am joined today by my good friend, Jesalyn Pettigrew from Mossy Gate Flower Farm. Welcome, Jesalyn.
Hey.
Now, did I get that right? It's Mossy Gate, but is it Flower Farm? I can't. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
I
good.
decided to go the long route so that nobody ever wondered what I grew.
Yes, but you don't grow moss.
No, well,
I
I
was
do
gonna
use
say,
it
just a
and I
sec.
do forage it.
Yeah,
I
we were
do.
we were just talking about some other value-added things. So that's fantastic. Well, hey, so everyone, I want to introduce Jessalyn because she's a good friend of mine who has been growing flowers longer than me and has carved herself out quite a business that's gone from a lifestyle passion type thing. So I really want to unpack that. And I also, Jessalyn is someone that I reach out to. You believe it or not, when I have other than tulip, and even sometimes when I have tulip questions about what can we grow, what's on the edge, what's coming next for cut flowers and all that fun stuff. So enough about what we're going to talk about. Let's get into it. Jesalyn, would you share for our guests a little bit about who you are and your journey and your farm, and start wherever you like?
Sure, sure. So the elevator speech is that I'm born and raised Washingtonian. I was born in Renton, grew up part of the years there, and then the family moved us to Snohomish, which was still wet and cold, just like Renton was. And then the whole family moved out to the Midwest, where when I got my degree, I thought for sure that I would be in the tourism industry, and I went after hotel management. And my goal was to be running a Airbnb before Airbnbs came a thing, um, and run it for the corporate sector because my dad works in aviation. And so I was like, oh, sweet, we'll have marketing, we'll have business, and I will own a really cool little hotel thing. And that's going to be my passion. Um, Flash forward, having two kids, moving back to Washington to follow my family, who all migrated back up here, and I missed my roots. We came upon Skagit County and found that we really liked the vibe here. We liked the weather better. We liked the culture better. Um, I ended up getting a little shop in La Conner with babies on my hips and thinking, oh, this is going to be so great, small town. Well, turns out I don't really enjoy retail. So I started to fizzle
Surprise!
and it needed a lot of capital. And then sadly, I was going through a divorce. Like it just kind of brought together all these different things. And so
Yeah.
when we separated, I ended up living in a little house at what I called the goat farm. I rented one down in the valley. And the boys and I got used to this new idea of me having to find a job and raising the boys. My ex lives in Everett, so he's not out of the picture, but he's far enough away where like we have to juggle our lives on our own.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was looking at what the heck am I going to do when I was going to be a stay-at-home mom slash retail store owner, and now I have to come up with a new thing, I don't know. And in a panic, I started gardening. I went to
Mm.
Costco and I bought some bulbs and I bought some dahlias and I had no clue what they were. My parents' version of gardening growing up was suburbanite. We went to Lowe's in the spring and we planted things that we thought were pretty and then they would die and we'd do it every year.
Yeah.
So my green thumb was not existent. And I found that every night, no matter how long the day was or how depressed or lonely or whatever the feeling, even a good day, I
Yeah.
always went out to check on the darn plants and
Yeah.
I was obsessed. Like I never missed a beat with them. Well,
Preach.
it turns
Preach.
right. Like it just was amazing. Well, at the time, Instagram was where I put all of my uploads of baby pictures, right? I was
Mm-hmm.
only using it for my children and my outlets of being a mom. And I decided to use it as a tool to figure out what the heck this white stuff was on my dahlias and is there a problem? Well, it turns out it's powdery mildew and it's prevalent in Washington. And I stumbled across a website that told me that there's such thing as cut flower farming and that you can make a living on it and that you could be outside gardening with your kids around and that you could actually make enough of an income that it might be a way to have this lifestyle that I'm trying to figure out.
Mm.
I immediately reached out to whatever resources I found. I think I attended the second annual Pacific Cut Flower Growers Meetup, which was down in Oregon. I sat at a table and there I met Vivian Larson of Everyday Flowers, and I overheard that she needed to hire some people. And I went over to her and said, I need a job. And my parents were on board with me making lower than minimum wage and watching my kids so that I could go after essentially another degree in my life. Like I got paid to learn. And I
Mm-hmm.
worked for her for 5 years and I worked for other big wholesale growers for a few shifts. And every year I never gave it up. I just kept learning more and being obsessed and trying to grow my farm on the side. So it started out with a little stand and like 1,600 square feet of growing space, growing my first 20 dahlias, my first status. How do I harvest this? Is that what that plant's supposed to look like? And then obsessively reading and using Instagram and reaching out to other farms. And then COVID hit and I got to jump into it full time, quit all the side jobs and focus. And it's been amazing. Now we're growing on over 2 acres.
So there was a COVID catalyst there for you then, huh?
Yeah. So during COVID, when everybody's panicked and flowers are seen as a non-essential item, I had better sales than ever. My stand at times had cars lined up because people were not only looking for things to do with their families that was isolated, like traveling to farm stands, but they were also looking for beauty and they were looking for ways to bring things inside when they were trapped in the house all the time. And people who are devoted to flowers are like people who are devoted to buying shoes. It's really fascinating to me that they need their weekly dose. And I had a really great following during that. I also happened to have just joined the Puget Sound Food Hub as their first cut flower grower. And in that, I gained grocery accounts, and the grocery stores are really looking at that local aspect. And that really helped be a catalyst for driving my business. So when I lost wedding business and my floral business, florists purchasing from me wholesale, I was able to jump into restaurants and grocery chains and just pivot. I just was able to pivot, and I never missed a beat that way.
Wow. Nice. And so you COVID hits, you're playing 2 or 3 different revenue angles, and then so it catalyzes around the farm. When did you tip into this is my thing? This is how does that work? Because you went from, okay, this is on the side, I know I want to do this. When did the business become real? When did you burn the other boats, if you will, to be able to say no?
To be honest, it was actually probably year 1 when I was working for Vivian, only because I realized how passionate I was through the entire season and looking forward to the next season. So a quick little backstory. I love to learn, surprise, surprise. And I chew things up and I spit them out as quickly as I learn them. And so I don't have a track record for sticking with things because it was never captivating enough. So my resume is like 3 pages long because I've done it. I've been a baker, a coffee maker, a life sales insurance seller, a bartender, an event planner. I've done it all. I've tried it and I can't think of anything new to try.
Yeah.
With farming, I found that I get to plan enough into the future and I get to make enough mistakes that I want to try better on that I stick to it. And so it was always the goal that I would grow my business and work for myself. But I was open to the idea that if it worked out to be someone's farm manager, I would take that route if it were presented to me. And it just never did. So it was always that, okay, when do you leap to manage your finances yourself? And what happened was me analyzing that I'm getting used to living on minimum wage and family suffers for it, but we're doing okay. And that I'm already investing any extra penny into my farm or vice versa. And we're already doing this juggle. So at that point, I realized the tipping was we can do this ourselves. We don't have to rely on the outside money because the farm now is made up that it's compensated. And I'm still juggling the finances to make the farm thrive just like I did before.
Yeah. And so let's double click on that. The finances, the running of your business. So you have a flower farm that is actually an agribusiness. And sometimes that's when people get sideways because they don't have the processes or the systems in place. And you and I have chatted before. How is it that you have been able then? Because there are people who grow amazing flowers that basically just have a big garden and they don't know if it's a viable business or not. You've come at it from both angles of, yes, this is my passion, love the learning. You get to show up with activation energy every fall, spring, and you're always in that mode. But it's the finances, it's the taxes, it's all that other stuff. How is it that you've been able to navigate that? Because that catches a lot of small business owners, especially farmers and growers who would way more prefer to be outside, even in the rain, 37 degrees, than sitting in front of an Excel spreadsheet or trying to navigate a state website to make sure that their taxes got paid. How'd you do it?
Well, I have to say that this last year I failed at it, and I had one of the darkest winters I've ever had emotionally and financially.
Hmm.
And a lot of that was I made some big decisions last year because I finally felt like the farm was a structured business enough. I have been keeping records for the last 6 years. My farm's now in season 9. I have a bookkeeper who handles the monthly expenses. I have some employees, so we do payroll. We have it all lined up, and I understand where the numbers are going. But
Hmm.
to be honest, a lot of the numbers were intuitive and in my head. And so I had to start practicing how do I tell other people what I know. So I took some wonderful courses. Our NABC, the Northwest Agriculture Business Center here in Mount Vernon, offered an amazing course called the Resilerator Program, which was for mid-level farms with some experience. And I applied and got into it. And it was a 10-week course with a small cohort. And it was really nitty gritty, the law of your farm, the accounting of your farm. And through it, I was like, oh crap, I think I've made some mistakes. And as the
Yeah.
course went on and winter hit, I realized, yes, I did. So this winter was really a challenge. But I think we're right now in a really amazing era where we can Zoom like this, where government is helping fund classes and
Hmm.
programs that we can take and we can Zoom them. I think I've taken 10 courses in the last 3 months, and all of them were farm related, which was important because they understand the hardships and the fluctuation of sales and downtimes. And then also, getting to talk to other farms because we have our mental emotional health, and you all go, oh yeah, I went through that too, and you're like, okay, I'm not crazy, because that's the
Right.
big thing is you keep thinking you're crazy.
Yeah.
um and I also found that it's okay that I've made these big mistakes, and once I really settled into going, wait a minute, I'm not being kicked out onto the street, I've not lost a limb, my children are still alive, everything's okay, and we're going to get through this, and we're just going to make this year better because
Mm.
that's the only thing we can do. So I think when you make sure that you do your records smarter, you won't hit the like I ran into. And then also that there are amazing resources. There are banks that loan specifically to farms. Not it doesn't matter the scale, as long as you can point out your numbers and show them the passion for your idea and then have follow through, they're there for you. There's government grants, there's other non-government grants. Grants are fantastic. They've helped me afford some landscape fabric, some irrigation, some my high tunnel, my cover crop seeds, because all of these things are for me to be better with the climate and the ecology, but they
Hmm.
also provide me a job and provide some other people a job. And so
Right.
it's like this whole societal thing that I've decided to tap into and embrace. And I think that's really important.
So let's talk about that too. This the ecosystem of flower growers. Walk us through the hey, I throw a couple of bulbs in a pot every year, all the way up through a full sized what we consider I don't know, a factory farm or something like that. What is the ecosystem like?
It's all in stages. So
Uh-huh.
that's one really nice thing. So you've got your planning time, you have your time where you're just trying to get everything started at once, whether it's a bulb or a seed, or you're even implanting or not implanting, you're ordering in plugs that you're going to transplant. Um, and then it's just lots of field work, raised bed, garden, whatever area you're going to do that in. And at the same time, you're trying to find your markets because
Mm.
there's that school of thought of build it and they will come. That is true to a point, but I have to say that my first few years, I grew a bunch of stuff and had nowhere to send it. And that was a
Yeah.
lot of compost. And
Yeah.
I luckily took it as a learning risk, but it's not a smart business venture. You should have a market to take your stuff to.
Yes.
But
The better question I should have asked is, Jesalyn, how do you make money in cut flowers?
oh man, you got to have someone to buy it.
Yeah.
And you got to make sure you lean your systems down so that you are having the least amount of cost in your system to get that same sale, because the market price is set for you. There's only so far you can charge per stem. It's a perishable product that nobody needs, although some people could argue that. But
Hmm.
like, it's one of those very fickle things, and then you have to convince others that your pricing matches their value for some reason.
So talk to
And
us about. Okay.
Well, and I was just gonna say, and just like because I went into the grocery game, that's even a different. Now it's high volumes steak, which
Yeah.
is challenging. Like to be able to forecast what I think I'll have in a few weeks, and then know that I can do an X number amount of it has been an interesting growth spurt. And it's a different price point because I'm guaranteed sales, and I have a lot to push.
Yeah, let's pick apart those sales channels for me. So you've got grocery. I think people understand how that works. And although it's not like you roll up to the Safeway dock and say, hey, here's a bunch of things that go in. So help people understand the process on that and why the role of the food hub might play in
Okay.
that. Maybe even just a little bit about what the food hub is. I'll get Andrew on this podcast. It's just when we have two Andrews on the same podcast, people get confused. So I got to get him to legalize his name first. But you're on notice, Andrew Yoakum. I'm coming for you, buddy.
So the Puget Sound Food Hub is an amazing cooperative of local farms who produce meats, produce, value-added products, fruits, berries, salsas, all sorts of edible things.
Mm-hmm.
And they accepted me into it, and so now I have a way to sell my products to restaurants, industries, and grocery stores. The food hub itself takes a commission, and they are responsible for billing, selling, organizing the orders, and distribution. So it allows me to have one central place to bring my product, and then they drive it all over the place. I think my furthest customer is in Lake Taps. And that has freed up my time. So now I know what my orders are going to be. They're in an organized format. I have labels. I have a system in place, and I take it all to one location, and then it gets distributed.
You run it out to Best Road, and then they run it. So it's the logistics, the storage, and they do some of the sales as well, right? So they have sales and marketing, and then also the storage and the logistics and getting it outbound. That's pretty slick. And so that's okay. So that's the grocery. What are the other sales channels that you use as a farmer?
So I also have my farm stand, which actually generates a decent amount of revenue when I give it some attention. Last year I was kind of bad about that. And then wholesale is considered either through a wholesaler. There's a few flower directive markets down in Seattle, so I can bring things down and drop it off and have it sell, or to florists and designers who purchase the product to resell for events and other products. So I do wholesale, I do grocery, and I do retail, which would be the farm stand or subscriptions.
Right. Yeah. Direct to consumer type things.
Yeah.
And of course and I say of course, but people might be surprised that really for you in terms of margins, that's the highest. And there's some risk associated with that as well, as one might assume.
Yeah, and I don't actually pursue that one as often as I could, and I've watched other farms really make good money in it because it turns out that I don't juggle the process of each customer as well as I thought I would have. I would prefer to have my lot sold or dropped off somewhere and sold for me than to manage all of the subscriptions and all of the different outlet drop-offs that you would need for that. And so I've found that even though the margin is better to sell retail directly from my stand to the end result, it takes a lot more of my effort.
Yeah. Well, and when I consider really the cut flower ecosystem, it's kind of a mosaic, like a lot of small businesses, where for you get your energy. There are some who are on Instagram all the time or Pinterest or whatever, they've cultivated a really expressive personality connection with consumers, and then people lose their mind and throw money at them. And then they buy flower and throw money at them, meaning that they buy their products and hoodies and trucker hats and all that other fun stuff. And so that's what they put their energy into. And then there are other that are more, you really get your energy from expanding, right? And not just like in terms of square footage or acreage, but continue to cultivate and really put an edge on how it is that you can be the best flower grower. And it seems that you've gravitated more towards the wholesale plus, what you could call that, right? Where it's just kind of wholesale but it's not, you're not competing on a commodity. And I think that's the part that I really want to point out. So how did you arrive at that? How did you get there?
I think it really helped getting to work for some major farms. They were direct. Each one had their own specialty flower crop that they preferred, and yet they all were at the time gravitating towards wholesale. So I
Mm-hmm.
got to learn a lot about that higher volume, quality, what else? Consistency that we have to do in order to compete with the commodity growers and the imported product. And while I was getting to be on those farms, I also got to weed out what I didn't like about things on those jobs, and then hone in on my free time, on my weekends and evenings when I was still obsessing, what I preferred out of that. And then to be honest, I'm my first many years, probably up until 3 years ago, I promised I would never do mixed bouquets. I don't enjoy them. They stress me out. And they're actually a whole different thing to plan your crop rotation for.
Mm-hmm.
That is my highest seller. I finally said yes to it because I also understood that I had to follow the market. The market is
Yes.
dictating what it wants. And even though I love a certain thing in a certain color, I will be having a very small sales outlet if I don't listen to what the consumers demand.
Yes, this is a lonely stop on that bus route toward profitability if there's no customers standing around with you when
Yeah.
you get on your bus. So, but that is interesting that you figured out a way to make it work for you.
Yeah.
In terms of,
I mean,
and that's
and I think the thing that I'm fighting now, like if we go back to thinking about finances and stuff and how do you make a business profitable, not only do you have to have your numbers in order and make the right decisions, you also have to be willing to take risks. I have said yes to things that I wasn't sure are going to work out, and some of it has worked out great, and then the other ones I'm learning from. But I'm also trying to battle the stigma, and don't, I hope nobody takes this wrong, but it really is a challenge. I am not married to somebody who's providing my shelter and my food and all of my expenses. I'm having to pull this off with my farm.
mm-hmm,
And I have yet to find enough flower farm examples that it's successful. So
mm-hmm,
I'm not sure I can pull this off yet with limited resources. I don't own
mm-hmm.
anything, so I don't have equity assets. And so I'm really struggling to find a creative way to go after something that other people have a more normal route. And
Yeah.
we'll see if it'll become profitable or if I'm really just swimming up a waterfall. I'm not sure yet.
You are in deep water for sure, and as a fellow deep water swimmer, I can tell you that only time will tell, right? And sometimes
Right?
we go under, and then you bounce back up, and somebody throws you a lifeline, and you just catch your breath long enough to catch another face and a wave in the face, and oh, this journey that we call entrepreneurship, especially when the 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 weather is such a huge factor of what we do. To walk us through like what's I wouldn't say an average day because I doubt there is one, but on your best days as a flower grower, what like from eyes go open until eyes go closed, well, what's that like for somebody who's like I like pretty flowers but I have no idea what a day in the life, the best day in the life of a flower grower might be.
Okay, so let's look at a day in spring where you're still doing spring prep stuff, but now you've got harvesting and sales happening at the same time, and your kids
Yes.
are still in school, which is helpful. My kids are in elementary school, third and fifth grade right now, so I luckily have a bus that comes and picks them up, and then they're gone for a few hours and they're off my mind. Um, I am not a crack of dawn person. I do wake up with the sunrise, but I lay around and I fuss and I drink coffee for 2 hours and don't do a darn thing. And I found that I just need to embrace
Yeah.
that. And then once I get moving, which is usually around 9, because I need to wait till the kids are on that bus, it just is much easier in my life. It's go time. And from then on, it's strategic movements. I have a prop tunnel and a small greenhouse at my home property. And then my main growing area is 20 minutes away, and then the food hub, which is my biggest drop off site, is another 10 to 15 minutes from the field, not even from my cooler. The cooler is 30 minutes from it. So I have to be very strategic about not wasting my time and space. My
Mm-hmm.
vehicle can only hold so much. And so it's usually, okay, what products do I bring from the prop tunnel into the trunk? Don't forget some tools, go to the field, meet with your farmhand, get those tasks set up, unload the car, harvest, load the car, make sure when you go the other direction, it's always business related. And our busiest days, like let's say May, June, when we really have some flowers coming on and we have orders every week, I will have up to 4 drop off days at the food hub. And those give me 24-hour notice of what needs to be harvested and packed. So last year it was myself and my mom doing bouquets full time. And then I had farm hands only 1 day a week just handling the weeding and the planting, which was amazing. It was a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom and I could get the harvesting down pretty quickly, and then we can make a full bouquet and get it packaged and put into its box. I think we have it under 6 minutes per, like for the whole, maybe no, it's under 3 minutes per bouquet with the packaging and in the box, and then load it up into the car. And so it's all about time trials and trying to shrink that time and be really efficient. And we end our day usually around 6 p.m. And then I come home, make dinner, and stop thinking for a while. All my devices get shut into silent mode, and 7 p.m. on, I'm watching shows with the family or playing Nintendo with the boys or relaxing and trying not to think about the farm until the next day.
And you're successful in that?
Last year actually went really well, and
Yeah.
I was surprised because I'm really trying to embrace the concept of the 4-day work week. And if I can't do that because of when my delivery days are, then why can't I look at having a shorter work day and making that work day really concise? It's like when I was going to school as a kid, when we homeschooled, we did learning for 4 hours and then had the free day because we honed in our focus. And I'm like, well, why can't I do that with my farm? There are some tasks that will take all day. Like the other day, we tried to go plow a new property, and then that didn't work out. And then, like, the whole day just was a long day of things that weren't going well. And then you have other days where you're like, oh my God, I got to till the field. And it only took you 30 minutes. And you're like, oh, right. So there's tasks that can shrink down. Right. And the other thing that I embraced too, to make sure we didn't hit a midsummer burnout, was I need a siesta. I actually do better with a 20-minute power nap, and I need to get out of the sun. And so do my staff. Yeah. And so I'm working on fluctuating that with them because we all live in different locations. But from 12 to 2, that's when I have lunch with my kids. I get out of the sun, I take a breather. And then for 3 hours after that, I can work so much better.
Yeah.
And I just want to honor these more life cycle things and not be so stuck on the normal 9 to 5 idea.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the upside of this, making it work for you. Like, you're organizing your business around your values and what, ultimately what's important to you, and it's working, which is outstanding. So let's talk about tulips. You grow tulips.
Yeah.
And why? And what do you do with your? What do you do with your tulips? You grow them. What are
they go to my stand? They go to grocery, and they go in mixed bouquets mostly. And my florist. I have a few florists that definitely want them right off the bat, but grocery ended up being larger because even though we live in a valley that there are so many tulip growers. Oh, guess what? I was selling doubles and pretty ones, and so they had room.
I was going to ask which ones you grow. You're not growing the ones that you can get for $5 a dozen that are coming out of a greenhouse in Canada or something like that, right?
Right.
Which there's something to be said for them. I'm not going to, but there's
totally.
It's different, and so I think help people understand that a tulip is not a tulip. Right. A tulip is definitely a tulip, but if you've seen one tulip, you are missing out on the literally 4,000 different other varieties that are out there. So talk about the ones that you grow, and clearly you grow them either and or because you love them, and especially because you can sell them at more than 25 cents a stem to a wholesaler.
Exactly. So they do cost more per bulb because they are fancy. They still take the same amount of time to grow, the same requirements. So that's to my advantage. I got to learn from some wonderful farms out here on varieties that work well for us, and then adjust my own color choices and seasonal choices, because tulips come in early, mid, late varieties. And so trying to come up with that combination for me that helps extend my sale period. Since they're a one and done crop, as we like to call, you get one bloom and one shot, I have to come up with ways to hit all of my markets. So I need colors that work for grocery, but work really well for weddings, work really well for other holiday events that happen during the spring. So that way, if one group who might be fickle, like a wedding, there may or may not be some that month, that year, then another market can pick them up and I can sell it through that. I love the doubles the most. They look like peonies or roses, and a lot of times that's what a customer thinks I brought out when they see it all blooming out, and those are my first and foremost favorite. I also enjoy parrot tulips, which I end up actually spending way too much time in the field getting photos because they literally look like feathers off of parrots, and you just get mesmerized. And I also do enjoy some of the Darwin, the ones with the really big heads, but I don't have a lot of use for those because once they open, they're kind of obnoxious in a bouquet. And I have to now consider that my flowers must double to work in a bouquet if that ends up being what I use for them.
Right. Yeah. We and so thank you for walking people through that. We don't do a lot of what I call the fancies, like the exquisite. People get asked a lot why that is, and one of the reasons that historically, if you live in an area that gets any amount of wind, then it's not so good, especially the doubles. And I am on record as not being a lover of doubles, and it's not because I don't think they're pretty. It's just because when they get wet and they catch some wind, they snap, and that, like you said,
they snap.
Done, and so. That being said, next year at our pulvers at Tulip Valley Gardens, Holly's been working on the site map for that, and that's almost going to be exclusively exquisite. So parrots and doubles. I think she said something like 40 different doubles, and I just rolled over literally in bed. I'm like, I don't want to talk about it. We're done. Like no, I will plant the field as it's designed by my dear wife, but I tell you what, I'm like that many. But it's you pick, and it's it's stuff that's going to go to the garden, and I'm not an idiot in terms of well, if we can get 75 cents at a wholesale or $4 a stem retail, then maybe we'll I can be taught. But it is knowing where you're growing and what works for your climate. And so if you get stiff wind.
And coming up with the solutions to it, because like you're saying, wind, and a lot of your model, you can leave it in the field. It's about the display. It's about people seeing them, where the exquisites do fall over if they get too wet and full of water, or they mold if they didn't open properly on the next warm day or whatever. But once you put that into your mind and going, okay, the management system for this crop will be XYZ, then there's lots of room for success.
Yeah, of the fun, guys, you hit on that, because growing tulips is not the same thing as growing sunflowers, right? It is now put us on a scale here. Of the flowers that you grow, where do tulips fit in terms of complexity and pain in the buttity?
Oh, those are super easy on the scale.
Oh, good.
It's just timing for me. It's just making sure that I don't take the dry day for granted and I get out there and grab all of them that I can. You don't want to give them a lot of time in the field.
Right. So for harvesting wise, that's something you have to stick.
It's a daily thing, and sometimes twice daily. So like this year, this is my second year growing it off site. I used to grow the tulips at my home because of how often I'd have to go and pull them. Now I'm feeling a bit more confident in, oh yeah, I will be out at the field. No problem. I won't miss them. I'll harvest a little younger than somebody might, just to risk keeping the bulb. So I just have different things in place and more confidence about it, but they're definitely like, you check on them multiple times a day.
And I think it's also interesting to point out that and I mentioned the big wholesale, so if you're getting tulips from the grocery store, Costco, or somewhere like that, where just like people, there's an expectation, and tulips are the most recognizable. And we're talking the Darwins, really what I consider the field style tulips. And I think it's important for consumers, especially when they look at, this, what is this feathery? Oh, no, that's a parrot. And you look at it and it's like, wow, that's $42 for a bouquet. And I can get 10 of them and it's really comparing apples and footballs, and that there aren't the exquisites that you might be able to get at the flower shop or directly from your grower. It's a different, it's not coming out of a greenhouse with mechanized, and so there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that's gone into that extraordinary flower that you can, even with, I guess with forcing, we don't force because I don't like cheaters. No, I'm totally kidding. We don't force because we're not set up for it. But the idea is especially for field grown tulips, you're looking at a month to 6 weeks here in the Pacific Northwest, and that's one of the longest in the world. Otherwise, there are other people that grow tulips that might get to enjoy them for a day, right?
Yeah.
As you see that. And so you mentioned, hey, you got to get right when you're picking and stuff like that. But what's it like to grow a crop like that? And again, there are other growers that will wink at you and say, what are you kidding me? You're complaining about having a month to enjoy these flowers. But there are other flowers that you're like, no, it's probably a month, 2 months, or 3 months, whatever, as long as it's on.
Yeah.
How is that different? What is it about tulips that drives that? How do you feel about that, rather?
I have fallen in love with tulips because once I understood their timeline and could get into sync with it, it's the first flower that I can, on this scale, grow in our season. So it's the first thing that I get to go touch and smell and share in my year
Yeah.
next to daffodils. And
Yeah.
I'm so excited and starved for greenery and color that it's like just makes me automatically love them.
Yes. No,
Also,
no. Here's the thing.
how
You heard me say tulips are the pumpkin spice of spring. We're going to put that on a t-shirt. It's going to be hello, Tulip Valley. Tulips are because it is the symbol of our season, the spring season. And it's got all the hope and all the, shaking out shaking off the cobwebs of being hunkered down for the cold and gray. And then we get these little just sparks of happiness that are springing from the ground that we planted in October, November, December, January, depending on when we were able to get in the ground. So,
and then you get to also go, oh my God, I didn't kill them. And that makes you feel good. And then when you pluck them out, they don't have thorns. They don't have hair. They have a pleasant smell if they do. The only thing you're dealing with is rushing rains, and you're kind of excited to do that anyway. So like there's a lot of positivity that's wrapped around a tulip, which is really refreshing after being through a winter.
Yes, no, I'll tell you, and you were absolutely right about the, hey, you didn't kill it. I was out in the field Sunday with my nephew, and he knows the struggle that I had last year killing a ton of tulips. And then there's one that popped up as the first one that we saw. He was like, you didn't kill it. Good job. You didn't kill it. And there's 929,000 other tulips. I was, good job. You didn't kill it. Like, yeah, look at me. I didn't kill it. And many more. Although the rabbits have been the real challenge for us this year. Well, I mean, so talk about pests. What do you do? Do you have pest pressures where you're at? I mean, deer love tulips.
Oh my God, they love tulips. And at my home site, I got really good at laying bird nets on things. And then that was the struggle is I didn't have a frame. So I took for granted that I could lay this little bird netting on my tulips and just ignore them for a while. No, they started to grow in it, and I lost some heads because you yank it off, and it was a learning experience. So yeah, deer at my home property are a real problem. Slugs are a real problem, but when tulips come out, so do baby ducks. And so then I'd buy ducks and they'd go eat all the slugs, and that was just charming.
It's a circle of life.
It's a circle of life. But at the main plot that I have tulips in now, the issue could be bird poop. The snow geese and the swans fly over all the time, so they'll make things ugly. And that it's just a bit wetter. So I am growing in the ground like you are down there, where I used to grow in crates up at my house.
Yeah.
But I found that it was really labor intensive for me, and we live in Washington. Everything grows great in the ground. So I just go ahead and put my tulips in the ground now.
Oh, and it's so funny that you should say that too. It's I know a couple of years ago, and a lot of cut flower growers, some other podcasts and folks that I know, they're doing the whole mulch program with their tulips. They just lay the bulbs out on the ground and put in 14, 16 inches of mulch over top of them, and you get amazing straight stems, and everything's viable. And it's like that's certainly it's not the way that we do it, but it's certainly, I actually did that one year at our house, and that I didn't have any tulips planted. And of course, Holly like, we're not gonna plant any tulips at our house. She said way more elegantly than that. But so I just, in a little bit of I'll show you, I grabbed a bunch of the cast off stuff that we didn't have room for, and I just in a garbage can, I just literally just poured it out over our garden where we had our vegetables, and then I raked wood chips over top of it, and everybody's, you can't do that, blah blah blah. And then I forgot to turn off the wood chip delivery, and somebody brought in like another 4 feet of wood chips on one part. And of course, the tulips grew all the way up. So I with 4 foot long. I'm like, I'm gonna be famous. Now that was a lot of energy for that poor little flower. It was very small, really long tail. But that is another thing that I tell people all the time if they're new to tulips, to put them. Pots are great because you can control how much water they get, and you can control the drainage, which of course is the absolute worst thing for tulips. At least for us up here, is that the drainage is too wet. But the other is if people have beds that they want to try the whole mulch thing. It's especially if you're growing for bouquets, right? If that is it's not the prettiest thing to look out your window and perhaps see a mulch bed with these blossoms or the blooms sticking out. But it's also, there's worse things than that. So.
And when you're doing it for a bouquet, it's pretty to look at mulch. Like that's the sexy
That's
part.
Exactly it. It's money. You're looking at great strong stems and every viable bulb, because like you said, at between 15 and 75 cents a bulb. Even Holly looked over. She's trying to get some of the harder to find bulbs, which we can talk about here in a second. And she wanted to pay retail, and I'm like, Yeah, just because we can't get them from our wholesalers. And I was like, I am not paying $1.21 a bulb. You've lost your mind, right? And then roll back over and no more talk about tulips, please. I'm gonna get her on the show and then she'll throw stuff at me. But yeah, I know. And so do you have some favorite tulips that you really enjoy growing and that you also enjoy really selling?
Yes. So my first one that I love to grow, but it's actually harder for me to sell unless I can get them to designers in particular, is one called Orange Princess.
Mm,
It is an exquisite or double, but it tends to grow on the short side. So it's really only good for people who weren't looking to play with a bouquet and they were going to do small arrangements. As the name tells you, it's orange, but it has purple veins. So
mm.
it has a really pretty juxtaposition between purple, orange, and green. And it actually smells like citrus, which is
Wow.
really fun. And I kind of get addicted to just snorting it the whole time because it's like smelling like an orange Skittles. It's a really lovely
Wow.
scent. Um,
Nice.
so that's one of my favorites. And my kids always ask me, like, that elementary school age, always ask, what's your favorite color? I don't have a set favorite color, but I do tend to be drawn to the oranges a lot. And so that ends up being one of them.
Very cool.
Um, I think I also really love, this one was another one that was hard for me. I think it was called Rococo, and it was a parrot that was this beautiful ruby red with some bluish tones to it. So it was rich and deep and then feathered, and that was gorgeous, but it also grew kind of short. So I tend to be really attracted to the vibrancy, and the vibrancy ends up being a shorter bulb. But as
Uh-huh.
far as another one that's really great to grow, I believe it's Finola, and it's a white blush, but sometimes it comes with multiple heads, and that has been really fun to
Oh,
have
wow.
when designs.
That is super, super cool. All right.
Yeah.
So you've been here in the Valley for a while. What would you encourage if people are coming up to visit? They're coming for the Tulip Festival. What are some don't miss spots that you after they've seen the tulips? Where would you send people to go visit as part of
Okay,
their
well,
Tulip
even though
Festival
it's
experience?
God, it's going to be so crowded there, but I have to say, if you ever come back up to the valley, I would say definitely go check out our new Sean O'Donnell's restaurant. It's my new favorite restaurant. They
Oh,
took
is that
over
right?
the farmhouse, and it's
Yeah.
so good. And I love the atmosphere. They remodeled the whole restaurant. It's lovely. Um, don't want to miss the Mount Vernon Farmers Market. It's charming. It's a nice stroll along the river. And I really love Taste of India down there. It's a great takeout food to go sit by the river and eat.
It is amazing Indian food.
Yeah, right. And then I have to say that I really enjoy going to some of our off-site parks, like through La Conner or even up in the Chuckanut area, to look at the trails and parks around there. And you can see the ocean and be on the beach without having to go to Deception Pass.
All right, Jesalyn. So we're gonna have the Jesalyn collection on our app. So of course we have the Tulip Valley app. So yeah,
Yes,
right. So we're gonna have a
awesome.
Jess. So you don't have to. We'll get all these spots in there so people can know this was the Jesalyn collection. So if you want to come
There
by,
we go.
that'd be awesome. All right. Anything else that we didn't cover that you think people are just like, oh wait, no, do people like tulips or like gadgets? They need to know this. Anything else?
Oh my gosh. Just don't be afraid to plant them. They're easy. And it's not to say that what we're doing isn't difficult. It's just saying it's something that's a rewarding experience to give it a shot.
It
And
yes.
something that you can have in a pot on a little apartment patio, or you can grow in a bed and enjoy for years to come.
There is something to be said, and again, for growing your own, right? And this is something where you can buy a bag of 5 and put them in a pot in October, November, just whenever, and forget about them. Give them a little bit of water, and then they pop up, and you can say, "Oh, I did that." And then that's the other thing, is you don't have to worry about it. It's not a come back and water thing, because then as soon as you enjoy it, or you put it in a bouquet, and then you're moving on to the next thing. Maybe that's
Yep.
why we like tulips so much, is because we get to enjoy them, and then we
And then we're
top
done.
them, and then they move into their next, and it's a short glory period with a lot of work, which I know you, Jesalyn, you're a person who can embrace the short glory period, get back to work, and I think that's
Yeah.
probably why I love tulips so much too.
Totally.
It's probably significant that that's our valley as well. We Skagit Valley is carved out of post industrial into from farming and fishing and logging, and we're going to carve it out and enjoy a little bit and get back to work. And so
Yep.
and we have the benefit, of course, of sharing at least the beauty of our spring bloom with so many of our neighbors, and look forward to again having you out on the farm and walking through. And I know you've got to call Holly, and the two of you need to connect on bull boarders. And
yes, we do.
It is so fun to partner with you on these things and the energy that you bring. So that's awesome.
Absolutely, it's been very good. I love it.
Sweet. All right, everyone, I'm Andrew, and this is Tulip Valley Talks podcast, and we have been joined by our friend and fellow tulip lover, Jesalyn Pettigrew from Mossy Gate Farm. And Jesalyn, before we cut everybody loose, where can they find out more about your business?
I do have a website, mossygateflowerfarm.com, and then also Instagram, same name. You'll see posts on that.
Brilliant. And of course, we are at tulipvalley.com as well. So without further ado, we're going to let everybody else get on with what they got going on. But thank you for joining us, Jesalyn, and everybody else enjoy your day.
Woohoo!